Welcome back. Now that you've done a little bit of thinking about the story, the emotions you felt, the traits that you learned about the characters, and about what you think makes up a personal narrative, I want to give you a little bit of an explanation of what we, as your English teachers, think a personal narrative is, and what we want you to think about as you start to process some of your ideas and think about what might be a good story to write about in my personal narrative. So in your reader's notebook, reader's writer's English notebook, I want you to write these traits down as I go through them. So you can take notes right there on the same page that you did your little 3-minute write. And we want you to have these in your notebook so that you can refer back to them. So first of all, when you're thinking about writing a personal narrative, there are 4 characteristics that really every personal narrative has. One of the things that a personal narrative must do is focus on just one episode of your life. So a small, tiny episode, okay? It must also be descriptive and show your readers what it was that you were seeing, doing, the character, the people you were talking to. You must show them what happened. Another thing that's really important, especially as an 8th grade writer now, is that you pick a moment that matters. And what we mean by that is think about a time when you learned something, so that when a reader gets to the end of your personal narratives, that reader says, I get it now. I see why this was an important moment to this person. I can see that there was a change or a turn in this person. And then the last thing that every personal narrative should be is in first-person point of view. You should be using the words I and me. It's a personal experience. You're telling other people, you're writing about it, so you're going to use first person. So I just want to spend a couple minutes going over these traits and characteristics of narratives, and then how our story, Everything Will Be Okay, really reflects those traits. So first of all, this Everything Will Be Okay is a small episode, right? It takes place in a day. We know that our narrator found the kitten in the woods, brought it into his house. That night, he and his brother went to the vet, and then they were eating dinner. So it was all in one day, okay? So it wasn't over time or a week or a month, and it wasn't one episode here and one episode here, and then he fell off his bike. Okay, nope, it was all about the kitten. All right. Now, there were times when the narrator did kind of have a flashback to remember that part where he remembers the hunting incident and the deer hanging from the tree. And so he does flash back to that, but it all has to do with what's going on in his head in this moment as he was eating dinner with his family. The next thing that every personal narrative should be is descriptive. In the very first paragraph, the kitten is explained as being a scrawny thing with burrs and bits of wood caught in its coat, where it still had fur, and pus coming out of its eyes and nose. We can see that, even though it's not a very pleasant thought or sight in our minds, right? We can see that. We know that this kitten is in bad shape. And then we can also see that deer hung by its feet from a tree just outside the kitchen, seeing the deer's eyes and that there was still life in them. Okay, so this was a very descriptive narrative. I could see the little boy crying in the basement next to the washing machine, right? I can see the kitten on the vet's table, right? The next thing that I want to just kind of illustrate to you is that whatever you choose to write about, make sure that it's a moment that mattered, that really, when you think back, this is something that changed you or really made you feel an emotion strongly or made you come to a realization like, this is what it's all about, right? So in our story, this boy is just 10 years old, and this moment mattered to him, right? Because he finally thought he was going to have his own pet. He'd never had his own pet. He talks about his dad's hunting dog, but his mom won't let it in the house because the mom seems to be kind of a neat freak, right? We get some clues and hints about some characteristics about the mom that she doesn't want animals in the house really, and doesn't want the beagle smell in the house, and also puts the kitten right in a box and out on the porch because she says it's full of germs. So he's never really had a pet, but he says in this story, the kitten is mine. I found it. It's going to be my pet. And then, of course, when we get to the end of this narrative, we really realize the moment that matters, right? This is the moment when the boy has seen a really horrible, hard thing for him. We know he has a soft spot for animals, right? We know that he really wants a dog to curl up with and lay by him when he's doing his homework. He wants that kitten. He doesn't like the hunting that his brothers did. And he doesn't like his friends who are sometimes cruel to him and his brother who sometimes holds his arm behind his back. He doesn't want to be that. And so he says this is the moment, right? He decided for himself what kind of a boy he was going to be and what kind of a man he was going to become. Okay, this was it. This was that moment where his brain kind of turned and he came to the realization that he didn't have to be a manly man like his brothers and his dad. He didn't have to go hunting, that he could care about animals and want and care about being kind to others and not mean and cruel. Okay. The last thing is just a quick, easy thing, but your narratives should be in first person point of view. So you can see that when he says, I can feel the tears welling up. And personal narratives should also be written in the present tense. So when you're writing about it, even though it's something that happened in the past, you want to put your readers right there in the action. So even though this is an older man, right, an author writing about this personal narrative, this moment that happened to him, he's writing it as if he were 10 again. So he says, I tuck the kitten under my jacket and I run out of the woods, right? I ask my mom to do these things. So he is there. He is putting us in the moment in the present tense. Okay. So hopefully you have those 4 characteristics down in your notebook. And as we move on in this unit, we are going to talk about how we are going to use these 4 characteristics and turn them into an amazing personal narrative. All right, off you go.